Let's start with the big news for the U.S. men's national team. Gregg Berhalter, earlier on Monday, dropping a 27-player list. Now, this is not the final roster for the Copa America, which we know will be a 26-player limit. This is for the friendlies against Colombia and Brazil, which will be played just before the tournament, but it's still a good indicator. Here's some of the headlines. 18 of the 27 players called in were on the World Cup squad back in 2022. One of the other headlines, the 4 strikers. That's right. Haji Wright, Ricardo Pepi, Falarin Balogun, Josh Sargent, all called into this group. No Brandon Vasquez, Alejandro Zendejas, Zach Steffen, or Walker Zimmerman. A couple of those guys, Vasquez and Zimmerman, talked about as potential overage players for the Olympics. Some MLS guys named as well. You can pick them out there. Timothy Tillman, Shaq Moore, Sean Johnson, and Miles Robinson, the 4 players from Major League Soccer that were called in. For more details, let's hear from the manager himself. Here's Gregg Berhalter.
This is a great opportunity for this group to play in the world's most historic soccer tournament that there is. And we're excited about it. We're looking forward to it. You know, it's a different type of soccer that gets played at Copa America. We're looking forward to battling through that. And, you know, it represents a great opportunity for this group and really evaluating, you know, the load in Copa America, the load in this whole training camp, and figuring out what makes sense for the players. But there are a number of players that we are considering for both the Olympics and Copa America. And we just have to see how the whole thing plays out. Nothing's set in stone.
Kirk, do you think they had enough headroom there for Gregg Berhalter in that shot?
Like, somebody give him a shout, like you guys work in media, just like tilt the camera down. Jeez.
We're not TV professionals here or anything. All right, let's start with the 4 strikers, because I think that's what grabbed everybody's attention. What do you think of the fact that Gregg Berhalter called in 4 strikers out of this 27 that he named for this roster?
Part of me is like, about damn time. Where was this in the World Cup, right? You could have brought in 4 strikers to the World Cup. Maybe wouldn't have ran into the problems you ran into towards the end. But then there's a part of me that thinks, like, maybe this is circumstantial. And what I mean by that, if you look at the wingers, true wingers, there's not a whole lot of true wingers. Aronson, Pulisic, Timothy Weah, true wingers. If you think about who's healthy up top, Josh Sargent's been battling this ankle injury, this foot injury, pretty much since before the new year. I mean, he played 3 games for Norwich, got injured, and then came back strong. And at the end, the last 2 weeks has been dealing with an injury. So part of me thinks maybe this is due to Gregg Berhalter not thinking he's going to have a healthy Josh Sargent throughout this whole process, or enough wingers who have played there. A lot of these 9s have experience playing that wing position. In fact, all these 9s have experience playing that wing position. So I'm thinking this is more circumstantial than it is Gregg Berhalter turning a new leaf. Either way, I love it. Either way, I am here for it. More options is a great thing. You saw what happened in the World Cup. You ran out of 9 options. When you most needed somebody who made sense for a game like the Netherlands, like Louis van Gaal, and the way they attack, the way they press you, maybe Jesus Ferreira wasn't the appropriate player to play that game, but Josh Sargent was injured. You know, you just didn't have that faith in Haji Wright at the World Cup. Maybe having a different skill set there, like a Ricardo Pepi back then, would have suited you. Now you have that chance. Now you have 4 very, very different profile players who can offer something distinct. And I like it. I like the 4 forward shout. I'm never against more attacking talent.
So the injury for Josh Sargent is, again, that ankle, the same ankle that's seemingly bothered him throughout his career. Gregg Berhalter addressed it and said there was some swelling that they were specifically worried about. And this is an injury he had in the first leg, I think it was, of the semifinal of the promotion playoffs. So it's pretty recent there. I think the other big development, Herc, when it comes to these 4 forwards is that Berhalter specifically mentioned Haji Wright and said he sees him as a winger, which to me is the big head scratcher there. Because actually, if I'm looking at that 4, and I'm trying to come up with a pecking order, to me it's Haji Wright and then everybody else, depending on whatever their fitness is, or whatever choice you want to make between Balogun and Pepi. But if I'm going off form, both with club and with the national team, I got to think Haji Wright's number 1 for the pecking order at the number 9, which is the job he ultimately wants. He doesn't want to be languished out to the wing, certainly not out to the left wing where he plays with Coventry, where he's got to compete with Christian Pulisic. So if I'm Haji Wright, I'm starting to think, Gregg Berhalter left me off the last roster entirely, right? Had to call me at the airport and beg me to come back. And now he's doing almost everything in his power to not consider me, it seems, for the number 9 job when I've proven I'm the guy. So when I see the 4 strikers, I'm thinking, all right, Haji's the guy, but then you hear Gregg Berhalter talking, and maybe that's not the case, Herc.
It's interesting because I look at these four, as soon as the roster was announced and went 1, 2, 3, 4, and I too found myself putting Haji Wright number 1 for various reasons. Club form, country form, how he last played, the last feeling he gave us with the U.S. men's national team, him saving the U.S. men's national from an embarrassing loss to Jamaica in the Nations League semifinal in the dying minutes in overtime, and all he did to start against Mexico. You started him against Mexico. And then I look at who he left out. Ricardo Pepi was left out of the final against Mexico. It was Haji Wright, then Fowler Balogun. So when you take into account the club seasons and the form with the national team, I too had Haji Wright penciled in, whether you want to say 1A or 1B, whoever else, he was clearly the top guy there. He was number 1. So when he says this, it gets me thinking in his mind, that's not the case. And when he talks about Haji playing out wide, it's circumstantial. It's only in certain situations where you're chasing the game, where you need a goal, where you want to get 2 forwards on the field. But either way, I agree. I don't think he was thinking about it as, here's my starting 9 in Haji Wright. I think he was thinking about it as Haji Wright is surplus and could be a player to maybe play if something happens to Christian Pulisic or something happens if we're chasing the game.
Right, he's versatile because he has played as a winger, but if you need another winger,